AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime Video. This week, the Dallas Cowboys take on the Detroit Lions in a new rivalry with lots of heat. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern with football's best party, TNF Tonight, presented by Verizon. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial. It's the Cowboys and the Lions, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on Prime Video. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Doesn't matter if you're an Indian or if you're a Warhawk.
The ULM mention is the greatest. You'd hope for the best as a ULM fan, but
this is the Bleav in the Warhawks podcast with hosts Dusty Thibodeaux and Chase Regent.
Chase, you always have such great insight.
Tibbs is going to bleep it all.
What are these guys always talking about?
We talk a lot about food on this podcast, and I'm going to continue to do so.
Really, really appreciative of the people and the community and the way that they've backed us up.
Nailed the introduction, by the way. Awesome.
Thanks,
I love
Fish.
it.
No, Chase. I think he is still wearing his emotions on his sleeve following the 30-27 overtime loss to close out the 2025 season at Louisiana Lafayette. So instead, we get the voice of the Warhawks. Mike Hammett joins us to discuss the 500 yards of total offense for the Warhawks, the most since 2021. Mike, were you even around in 2021?
Oh, I've been around since 2018. I've been around since the Caleb Evans days, yeah.
Oh,
yesterday felt like the Caleb Evans days to a degree. So, yeah, but unfortunately come up painfully short against, that was also the Caleb Evans days. Painfully short against the Cajuns, yeah.
So, Mike, I got to have your take from the top down. On that opening kickoff, 96 yards, are you like, okay, it's done? Or were you just kind of like, okay, we're down 7-0. It's almost like, they had a long drive to open it up?
I got to admit, part of me was going, uh-oh. I don't think it was throwing the towel, this one's over, but it was a uh-oh. What's this going to turn into today? And but the Warhawks responded the right way, and go right down the field and score and answer. And I felt like after that was over, the response from the offense and then the defense gets the 3 and out. It then almost felt like that was kind of the wake-up call, like, hey, it's game time, let's go. And I think it caught everybody's attention. Maybe it did the opposite for the Cajuns. I don't know. They score on the opening kickoff and think this is going to be easy and they're going to cruise, and maybe they had a bit of a letdown. I don't know. Maybe a little bit of both. But really, that was a lot of fun. To come up short, it stings, but it was a lot of fun. That was a fun game yesterday, and I just hate that it ended the way it did, but that opening kickoff, it kind of set the tone for what was, we didn't know what was in store then, but it was a wild game.
It was. And obviously I would have much rather us been on the 30 side of the 30-27 score, but I would take those games because it felt like that was the most complete game that ULM has played in a long, long time.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. Like, where I say it felt like the Caleb Evans days, what I mean by that is you go and look at the stats, for Aiden Armento to throw for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. You had a 100-yard rusher and Zach Palmer-Smith, kind of lending itself back to, Derek Gore and Josh Johnson and those guys. And then you had, a 100-yard receiver and Nick Trujillo. Jonathan Bibbs had over 100 all-purpose yards between receiving and rushing. There was so much good. And then the defensive side, to hold them in check for the most part, the middle part of the game, to not let them get away when the offense did struggle to finish off a couple of drives. Noah Flemings did what Noah Flemings did all season, and, just running guys down. Really Foster and Tiller in the secondary just doing their thing. I mean, running all over the place. And then the star of the last two games, I felt like, though, was Jiron Esther defensively, because that guy made so many great open field tackles and plays. And he took a tough defensive pass interference in the first half that I felt like it was a well-defended play. And, they tell me, looking back at the replay, maybe it was just a split second too early on his arrival. But, I mean, it was bang, bang. It was well played by him. So many good things. Frustrating that that's the end of the season. Frustrating that is, that's it. We don't get to see any more of this group, and it's over and gone. Frustrating that it took until game 12 for it to click like that. But, I think there's some exciting things, provided we'll see who comes back. We'll see who doesn't over the next few weeks. But I think some positivity to take into the off season despite the loss.
Yeah, I've been happy these last 2 weeks. I mean, I know obviously the scoreboard wasn't where we wanted it to be, but I felt like there were some glimpses of greatness coming last week against Texas State, and then that a lot of that carried over this week into the Louisiana Lafayette game. The thing that I really have trouble with, though, what does it look like to carry this momentum from these last two games into 2026? Or can you?
It's a great question, and something we talked a little bit about in our post game. I could tell Bryant Vincent was hurt, a little emotional with the loss yesterday. He was in the locker room for a while. We didn't get a chance to catch him post game. I know Chase told us afterwards that he came up to Chase and Chase said he was very emotional coming up to Chase, apologized for not getting back out in time to talk to him on the radio and all that. But what worried me is, focusing too much on that loss and what went wrong rather than, I hope they look at what went right the last two games, because it was very clear some things changed with how they are running things defensively. Some things changed with how they are running things offensively. And can you take what happened those last two games and say, this worked better, this is what we need to build it around? Let's target these guys to get them to stay. This is where you need to go build depth in recruiting. Obviously, both lines need more depth. Obviously, some skill spots, you need probably a little more receiver help and things like that. But man, I mean, all of a sudden, the last two games, Dusty, you look at going to 2026, before the last two games, you're sitting here going, do you need a quarterback going forward? Didn't really feel like, Aiden had a season and a half as a starter, and it didn't feel like he had really taken that step forward you were hoping to see him take this year until the last two ball games. In the last two ball games, he looked like a quarterback that could cut it in this league. He looked like a guy that could help lead this team a little bit better. And I think it's because of some of the changes they made offensively. It felt like it was maybe a little more tailored to what his strengths were the last two games of the season. And so I hope they look at some of those things and say, okay, Aiden, we want him to be our guy. If you hang on to Aiden, I think him and Nick Trujillo are probably a package deal. I think either they're both back or they're both gone, because I have no inkling that they would even consider the portal, but you just never know in this era who's coming and who's going. And so if they're back, I feel like that's a package deal. And I hope so, because we saw that connection really take off against the Cajuns. So, you saw some bright things to work with. And I think that's what you got to look at is what went right the last two games, what clicked there, because they felt like a different team. I don't know if it was because the pressure was off, because, all the goals were gone at that point and then it's just playing. I don't know. But whatever it was the last two games, that's, I feel like, what you got to build off of. It was a lot of fun, really enjoyable, and hopefully something they can take moving forward.
And the thing that's frustrating is, you look at that Monday, so to say, after the end of the season, you usually start kind of your speculation of here's who's coming back. Here's what we need to address in the recruiting front. Here's what it could look like when we open the season at Mississippi State. I don't think you could do that until July, maybe not even until August 1st. And so it's kind of frustrating not knowing how much of this team that we'll have that remembers this hurt, remembers these last two games, to use that as a go forward into next season. And you mentioned Nick Trujillo. I can't help but wonder if he didn't have some lingering effects, and this is without any kind of inside information, any still lingering effects from the collarbone injury that he had earlier this year.
Right.
And were these last two games where he finally felt like himself, where he was finally able to go out there and be the receiver that we all expected him to be?
It's possible. I mean, and maybe finally getting fully healthy and going. But man, he looked good. He looked good against the Cajuns, and he is going against a young freshman there in Gordon in the secondary, and burned him a few times. And I know Gordon got the last laugh because he got the interception in overtime, but really did a nice job of getting over the top against the Cajuns, against some of their defenders, and doing some things. And that made it a little different for guys working underneath. It opened up things for J.P. Coulter, opened up Ryland Green and Nate Sullivan making catches that neither of them had a ton of catches on the season, but they had big ones yesterday. So, I like that. It gives you an extra dimension when you got a guy that can go deep and make plays. Helped with the swing passes too, open things up for Braylon McReynolds and Zach Palmer-Smith when they caught passes out of the backfield. And, it's a big step forward. It was a good way to see that season end. And I hope, you got to put, if you're this team and you're any of these guys coming back, and even the coaches coming back, you got to put that 3-9 is behind you. You got to look at, again, the good and build off of that the last two games, because whatever changed between South Alabama and Texas State, if it's somebody else doing something, if they changed up duties, I don't know. But if something happened in the coaching staff, it's like, hey, maybe that kind of worked, and that's something we could adjust moving forward and do differently. I think it's going to be interesting to see. You're right, though. We're not going to know. The frustrating thing these days, we're going to have a better idea of the portal, at least with no spring portal. You're going to be pretty locked in. Spring ball is what you're going to have going into next season. So I think maybe we'll have a little bit better idea. But, man, this is it's going to be tough going into next year. And you talk about you need to build momentum, because the schedule will be nicer in that you'll have 6 home games next year, but the first 2 are on the road. And so that makes it even more difficult. And your FCS games against an awfully good FCS team that hosted a playoff game, and then your other home game in the non-conference is a pretty good FAU program too. So you're going to have 4 tough ones out of the gate next year. You got to be ready to go. And hopefully they can get a lot of these guys that can come back. Hopefully they will come back, because you feel like the team you saw the last 2 weeks with an off season under their belt to kind of build off of that, they might be a team that has a chance in some of those ball games to get this team off to, you'd hope maybe a 2-2 start. So then you go 4-4 in the Sun Belt, you get to 6, or 3-1. If you can find a way to beat UAB and FAU, then you got to just win 3 in the Sun Belt. So interesting off season ahead. Interesting off season in that I want to see who they sign coming up Wednesday. I know they've already got, several commitments, pretty good number committed, and they want to get a few more. And then how can they use, the later signing period? Do they get anybody out of the portal to help fill some gaps? But I think you got to kind of aim at what happened the last 2 games, and especially Saturday's game against the Cajuns, as maybe the framework for what 2026 looks like.
Yeah, you mentioned recruiting. I think we're sitting at around 17 to 20 commits, somewhere in that range. I think I have them all listed on Warhawk Report on the Warhawk Insider. So for the subscribers, they get to see a little preview there of what's coming up for Wednesday's signing day. But I had a great conversation yesterday on that front with, I don't know if he's defensive coordinator, linebackers coach, whatever he is, Troy Reffett. And I asked him, I said, Coach, what's this offseason look for you? And he's like, Well, in my 30 years of coaching, I've never had anything like this. Starting Monday, December 1st, it's shut down for a quiet period until like the second week of January.
Yeah.
He's like, the season's over. I usually hit the road. We go recruiting until, right up around Christmas time. And then it's quiet until that second week of January. And then it's kind of full go until National Signing Day, that first Wednesday in February. But he was like, I don't know what to do. And I don't know, are we going to have film study? Are we going to just kind of recruit our own players, to not go into the portal? Are we doing paperwork to make sure guys coming back for the spring? It's crazy to think that that's where we are this day and age of college football, that the coaches don't even really know what tomorrow holds for all of this.
And think about this too. Thankfully, ULM is not involved in this year. The wild coaching carousel today. So you're telling me guys like Lane Kiffin and, Alex Golish and John Sumrall and all them are, heading to their new destinations, but then starting tomorrow, you can't do anything until the middle of January. And so, the college football calendar, it really feels like is broken right now. And so they're looking for when that proper early signing day should be. Ever since they introduced it, it felt like right before Christmas was wrong. It felt like, this feels wrong where it is too. And, even talking with Coach Vincent last week when we did Hawk Talk, and he mentioned, recruiting JUCO guys. Okay. And that's, ULM's going to try to go after a lot of JUCO guys because they need some guys that have played a little bit of college ball that can step in and help, try to get this thing going next year. But some of the guys they're going after were playing at Hutch or, Iowa Western and, Tyler and some of those places that were still involved with the semifinals that I believe were yesterday. And so they're still playing. You couldn't get them on campus, and now you go into a dead period. And so you're trying to get guys to come in sight unseen. They haven't been to campus in Monroe. They don't know what they're walking into. And so you're hoping to sign a guy like that. That doesn't feel right. So, there's a lot of challenges. This is a different calendar this year than it was last year. And I think everybody's trying to figure that out. And I think because of the chaos you're seeing in the coaching carousel, especially the Lane Kiffin thing, I think there's going to be more changes coming soon to how this is all done again, because it's wild. It's absolutely wild. And I'm interested to see. We're going to hear from Coach Vincent Wednesday for the signing day. I assume anyway that there's going to be a media conference. There usually is. And that might be a good question is, what's this look like right now? What are you guys doing? And I really think for this group, it is probably about you're meeting with the players. You're trying to make sure the guys that you want back are coming back. And, there may be some guys too that you're like, it might be in your best interest to move on, And so you're trying to start molding that roster and figuring out how many spots you have. They're going to fill who they want. They're going to go get the guys they want the most right now in this cycle. But then they've really had their sights set, it feels like, on February and added, emphasis on that one. I don't know that I've felt that the last couple of years, even from Coach Vincent and his staff, but they really are looking at that second window as a great spot to add some more guys that maybe got lost in the shuffle this time because of how the calendar went. So interesting. It's, Coach Reffitt's been around this thing as long as anybody, and he doesn't know what's going on. I mean, that's absolutely wild. So going to be interesting to see how Coach Vincent and his staff approaches the next week or two, because even though it is a quiet period, you're still trying to mold what 2026 looks like.
And the quiet period only means that you can only, I believe, text and DM them. Yeah. You just can't have any kind of face-to-face or video calls, no FaceTiming, no phone calls. So it's still weird that you can still have contact, but it's not a actual, hey, how are you doing, and expect a live response back type of thing. But the way you describe that calendar really, in my mind, it clicked. It's like COVID 2.0, where we're going to commit to this school having never been there. The coach might have FaceTimed as he kind of drove through campus on a golf cart, so you could see blurrily, oh, look, there's a student activity center. Here's our practice facility. and really have no idea what you are really signing up for. And to be honest, ULM did a lot of that type of recruiting, and it bit them extremely hard because out of those signing classes, there's not many that stuck.
No, those were some. I remember, and it's not just football that suffered there. There was a couple other sports that it really struggled with those and hurt some things. And I mean, I've said it before too. I feel like, you go back, I feel like baseball was maybe affected more than anything in that they had a great season going before that COVID shut down, and then it got shut down, and then they missed on that recruiting class. The next couple of recruiting classes, it felt like only one or two guys stuck around, Michelle Artsberger maybe being the best one, and set them back. And unfortunately that ended up costing Coach Fed his job after a couple of years. And now, they're starting over again, and it's looking good. And I'm excited for baseball, but not that I haven't been, but I'm excited for baseball this year because there's optimism abounds with the new coaching staff with Coach Ford. So we'll see how that goes. But, to get back to football, I think Coach Vincent's hesitant to sign guys that haven't been in and don't know what they're walking into. And, he talked a lot to me about he wants to do it the right way, and that's good. That's a good thing. You don't want to just try to pull the wool over a kid's eyes, and then they get here and they're going, what on earth did I just walk into? And so I think it's good. And that's how you get the buy-in. I think we talked a lot about the culture toward the end of the broadcast against the Cajuns. And I think the way the Warhawks played the last couple of games is because of the culture that he's got in place. The guys are still laying it all out there and fighting as hard as they could, and not just laying down and playing out the string. And I think a lot of that goes back to how you recruit the kids and how you build the relationships. And they're not going to do just some, hey, we want you to come here. You haven't seen the place. Just get in here. It'll be okay. No, they want to do it right. So we'll see how this all works out.
You mentioned bringing it back to football. The real differences of the game, like I said, to me, first and foremost, and it was there glaringly obvious, the place kicking. Whether it be that opening kickoff that was just short and was returnable, it wasn't through the end zone for the touchback. We attempted what in the college ranks, a 30, 32-yard field goal should be kind of a standard easy chip shot. I don't even think it cleared the end zone there. And that is not to call out the place kicker. I'm not even going to say his name, not out of disrespect, but it's nothing about him. But that shows exactly how bad off the special teams was, especially in the second half of the season. And I don't know how you address that, because we had two kickers. That should be enough. Obviously, you went to 3, you went to 4, you went to 5, and it was still a problem. So what do you do? Do you do an 85-man roster of, hey, I know you're a quarterback, but you can kick also, right?
Well, the fun thing was to see Mackenzie Ryan place kick yesterday, too, to get those last couple of extra points. That was interesting to see him do that. And, I love it.
And you missed the best part of that. He was over there trying to warm up, and Max Larson was there front and center, acting as a coach, leaning over the rail, telling him, no, here's how you do your approach. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do that. And you could tell Mackenzie Ryan, his head was just like, I think I'm doing this right, but he's yelling at me, so I'm not. And so it was like messing with him. And I was like, great, it's going to come down to a field goal. He's going to, just completely right angle it.
I missed Max I missed that. I didn't see Max in the stands leaning over doing that. That's pretty good. But the kicking game, we talked about it, and and we were very clear, 'cause obviously we say everybody's names on the air and all that. We praised those guys. Honestly, I know it wasn't what you need to succeed, but you talk about Jacob Green and Chambliss in particular, those guys. I mean, they gave it all for their university, for their local university. You're talking about a Sterlington kid and an OCS kid. They gave it all they came off the street. They were on the couch. They haven't been working out, kicking, doing all that stuff, building up leg strength and all that you would be going through if you were an actual scholarship college football player, even walk-on college football player. They hadn't been doing all that. And so that was the first thing because we did talk about this a little bit, and I said, this is not a criticism on them. They came off the couch to try to help this team. This was not their fault at all. But what it comes down to is you have a kicker yesterday, you win that game. I mean, you don't miss that initial extra point. Yes, maybe you do, because it wasn't a great snap. That's why that first extra point missed. It had just rained
because the timing was off.
Yeah, the timing was all off. So it wasn't all on that. But you have a chance to kick a couple field goals in there, and it changes the complexion of a game like that. And I don't believe we go to overtime if Max Larson was healthy all season. If he's the guy, I don't think that game goes to overtime yesterday. How many other games did that change throughout the year, though? When you go back and look through it, does it change Northwestern, where you got down there so many times and you're close, and if you had a guy that had some range, maybe that changes how that game goes a little bit. I don't know that you win, but it at least makes it a little more interesting. Coastal, again, gives you a chance. Troy, especially, that game was tight. It got away in a hurry late in the third and into the fourth quarter because you were having to press a little bit because you had no range with your kicker. It changes what happens with Troy. It changes how you do a lot of things, because there are so many times the Warhawks had to go for a fourth down that really wasn't one that you want to go for, and they had to. And then it changes, like you say, the kickoff game. I mean, nobody to boot it through the end zone, nobody even to get it to the end zone. That changes things a little bit too, because you gave up some good field position quite a bit throughout the year. Special teams are important, and this year it came back. Unfortunately, that's where the injury bug bit the hardest between, Max Larson and Luke Stagg. And I hate it for Max because he was so good last year. I hate it for Luke because he was going to be one of the best stories on this team. He was one of the best stories on this team until he got hurt and brought to a close what I felt like was going to be a pretty cool ending to his career at ULM, and unfortunately cut it short. But, I think the Warhawks, I don't know what the status is of, Max Larson going forward and some of those guys, but I'm sure that's in recruiting too. Is they got to add a couple of guys anyway to feel good about that. And, I'm going to carry 8 kickers out of 85 guys or something. I don't know, but it was one of those. It was a frustrating part of the year. Certainly changed, 3-9, I don't know that it gets you bowl eligible, but maybe it gets you to 4, maybe it gets you to 5, changes the confidence level of this team. Who knows? So, really, unfortunately, a big impact to not have somebody healthy at that position with experience. It's been working out. That's been doing all of that to help this team this year.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
When you think boots, you think Ariat. You think comfort from day one and durability to day 1,000. You think steel toes on the job, square toes on the dance floor. With style that owns a Saturday night and still looks sharp enough for Sunday dinner. And through every mile and every moment, you're thinking Ariat boots. Boots that show up, stand out, turn bad ideas into better stories, and still punch the clock come Monday morning. Now, it's time to stop thinking and start shopping. Find your Ariat boots at Ariat.com or a retailer near you.
And I say it all the time, special teams will win games for you.
Yeah.
But it was great also. The announcements out there, S.J. Tui, new athletic director, he was there on the sidelines taking it all in. I think he was a little overwhelmed at just how passionate some of the people on the sidelines were, and he didn't get it yet. He was out of his element. I will say that much. And so it was interesting to see that he was at least there and trying to start getting it.
Some people, the passions. You're not referring to somebody who didn't bother to show up for this podcast tonight, are you?
That was only one of several. I may have contributed to the understanding of passion.
Yeah, that's a great place for him to start. And I don't know if I expected him to be there or not. I think I was a little surprised to see that he was there. I didn't get a chance to meet him, but I saw him down talking to Chase pregame. And I think it's a great place for him to start, though, because you're on our sideline and you're looking across at this big old thing that just got built down there, and you're seeing what exactly we're up against, here in Monroe and what we're trying to compete with. Not saying the facilities are going to change overnight here, but something's got to happen with the facilities, because that's not everything in recruiting anymore, but it's a good part of it still. I mean, you don't want to go somewhere where, it looks bad. And Coach Vincent's done a great job of some cosmetic upgrades, the flooring and some painting and some new lights and, some new wall decorations and things like that to make it look good. That's great. But, what does it come down to? Can you find a way to get an indoor facility built? Can you find a way to, eventually build some new suites and build a new press box and all that? And some of the bells and whistles that, it doesn't impact the players, but it makes it feel like a big time environment. And, I love that about Dr. Castile too, that I believe she went to every road game this year. And in the past, we've had presidents that have gone to the big time road games. They've seen us play at Texas, and they've seen us play at Texas A&M and Ole Miss, but they don't go to the Sun Belt games, and they don't see what you're up against and why is this program struggling. And I thought that was huge to have Dr. Castile on the road and to see SJ there yesterday. And I know as athletic director, I'm sure he's going to be on all those trips going forward too, to go and see, hey, this is what needs to happen and make it look right. So absolutely huge to have him there, and hopefully, throw him in the fire, see what it's all about between the Warhawks and Cajuns. Coach Vincent even admitted with you guys. I listened to that podcast and we talked about it too this past week. He didn't know what it was fully about last year. And you could tell this was one of those games that they were locked in for. It felt like A-State, where it's like, man, we got to win this thing. It kind of had that feel this past week. So he knows what it's all about. And so now, hey, day one on the job, here's your introduction. Here's that team we don't like. Let's figure out how to beat them and beat them on a consistent basis.
You mentioned Kerry Castile, president. I was impressed when they started playing Sally over the PA, like at a TV timeout. She knew the words, Mike. She got elevated way up in my book on that.
I mean, and it's still early in her tenure. I do like where it's trending. But hopefully she's been able to see what it is, what it is in the Sun Belt. And, we need a president that understands athletics. I feel like maybe we have that, and we'll see, like I say, there's so many things that need to happen to Malone. There's so many things that need to happen to Fant and, all of the facilities really, but she gets it, I think, to a degree. And so it's going to be an interesting next few months and whatnot to see what happens. Are there any capital campaigns or, anything like that? Are we announcing plans to do things and we need to raise money first? I know there's plans out there that aren't necessarily public or anything. They're kind of like, hey, we'd like to do this, that kind of stage of it anyway. But, it's, be nice to finally announce something to the public and say, hey, this is what we want to do. Here's our concrete plan. Here's our vision. I hope something like that's coming. And I think it will, now that SJ Tuohy's in there and he's a money guy with his background and everything at ORU and UCF and all that. That's been his job. So hopefully we're starting to head down that path, that we get that vision for what it's going to look like and something that people can get behind and see this is what they want to do and moving forward.
I feel like it's the catch-22, right? You need a plan, because if I just go to you, hey, Mike, I need $1 million.
Right.
For what? Well, it's a different conversation if I say for this, and I have the binder with the pictures and, the schematics and how the return is and all that. But I feel like as much as we say, oh, well, Malone needs updating, Fant needs, what does that mean? And,
Right.
and what I picture is completely different, probably from what you picture, from what Vincent pictures, and so trying to come up with that common terminology, that common vision, I think is really going to be his biggest challenge. And then, like I posted before on Warhawk Report, it's like saying, I want to drive a McLaren, but I work at McDonald's. Eventually, I'll get enough money to get it, but it's a long road to get there.
Right.
So understanding, okay, my McDonald's salary is going to get me my Pinto, then upgrade to the Corolla and so on until I get there. So we need to kind of have that staged approach so that you see the progress, and it's a lot easier conversation of, hey, Mike, you gave $50 last year. Can you do 55 this year?
Yeah. I think that's what's got to be done. I mean, you're right. What I may think needs to be done, to Malone, I want a new press box, but what does that matter to success on the field? It doesn't matter at all. So, there's other things that mean more, an indoor facility and maybe a new weight room and, things like that. As you go down the list, that'll mean more. I think you got to have that vision. You got to have that plan out there. And like you say, you got to kind of build to it. You can't just, unless you got that angel donor that says, here's $100 billion, go do what you want. Unless you can find somebody who says that, and then you can just say, okay, we're done with the season this day. We're going to rip down the loan and it's going to be a completely different looking facility the next year. I don't think that's going to happen. It'd be nice, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, unless somebody hits the lottery around here and wants to donate, but, you got to have that vision. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing is I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. And, I know it's going to be a lot thrown at SJ here in the next few weeks and whatnot to see where this athletic program is at and what you're competing against in the Sun Belt, especially, if you get a look at what's going on in Monroe, Louisiana, and what's going on in Harrisonburg, Virginia, when you're looking at the bottom budget in the conference and the top budget in the conference, and just the gulf in there between those two. It's a long way to go, but there's certainly some things you can do to chip away at that pretty easily, it feels like, too. And so it's been a long time. It feels like it's been a while since there's been that true vision in the athletic department, and hopefully that's coming here, now that you've got a president in place, now that you've got an athletic director in place, you got a head football coach that is great, very charismatic at rallying the community and getting people behind him that can still be the face of the department, even though he's no longer the AD. It feels like there's people in place, and now can you put it all together, create that vision, and start chipping away? It feels like one big fell swoop is too much. Like you said, chip away. Let's just start working our way that direction and see where it goes.
That doesn't mean that, Mike, we go down to Home Depot and buy some copper pipe and say, there's our contribution to the indoor facility. That's not what that means, by the way.
No. Well, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited that we at least have everything in place now, at ULM, that you got the president, you've got the athletic director, you got the head coach for football, and even across the board, what Coach Phil's doing. That I know men's basketball is struggling right now, but goodness, you watch the athleticism of some of those guys and how they're playing, and they're still a little banged up, and
we're close.
They're close to getting that thing going. What Scotty's doing with women's basketball, goodness, they're fun to watch. I'm excited to see what Coach Ford has done this offseason. I didn't get a chance to get out to as much fall ball as I wanted to this year, but I hear a lot of good things, and that's fantastic. And then, of course, Molly, my goodness, what she has done with that softball program, it's unreal. Absolutely. And same with Will in soccer. It's unreal what's happened with those programs, and shows that it can be done in Monroe. It absolutely can be done in Monroe. You just got to find a way to translate it. How did they do it? Maybe there's some things you can pick off of those two in particular and say, this is what can be done. And man, it feels like the right people are in place, and now it's time to get that vision and get that moving forward.
My only hope and we're probably 3 months away from it. I just hope softball is not picked the preseason favorite in the league, because that's just as bad as if you're picked 14th in the league, because you're not going to finish there. I assure you, nobody's going to run in here. And I had this conversation with Ford as well, that it's crazy in the Sun Belt when you can say we finished 5th and it was a great year, because in baseball and in softball, that speaks pretty loud volumes.
You finish 5th in baseball, you might make a regional. You might be in the NCAA tournament. That's great. Softball, I don't know, is quite to that level, but finishing, that's still a gauntlet. I think softball, you got to be top 3 or so. Usually you got a pretty good shot, but this is man, what a league in the diamond sports, as they say. I hope they're not picked to win the league, because I don't want those expectations on Warhawks softball, but I think they could win the league. I think they're going to be that kind of good, but they don't need to be picked number 1. No. Don't do that. They need to be like soccer, which I think soccer was picked 7th or 8th and ended up winning
right
the
in the
league.
middle.
Yeah. So if softball, 4th sounds good, 4th or 5th, somewhere in there. Yeah. You put a little chip on the shoulder, and, I like that. So, in baseball, I mean, let's face it. I would be stunned if ULM isn't, they're going to be 13 or 14, I feel like, when the baseball poll comes out. And, we've seen Scotty Fletcher. They were picked down low, and that's plastered all over their offices down in Fant. They took that personally, but at the same time, Coach Fletcher handles it well, because publicly he's like, "Hey, we're all new. Nobody knows anything about us." And I kind of feel that way about baseball. That they got some guys that are back, but they're mostly new. So, speaking of which, it's going to be December 1st tomorrow. I probably need to get started on my baseball prep, because I got a lot of guys to learn before the season starts in February. So it's going to sneak up on me, but it's fun. It's exciting to have all the optimism at the moment. And that comes when you got new people, and, I feel like it's different though. I've been around for some of these changes. This feels different. And so, hopefully that comes to fruition. 3-9 is disappointing this football season, but at the same time, man, there's a lot to like, and there's a lot to like with what's going on in both basketballs and baseball and softball, and even soccer and some of those other things. It's women's golf. You can't what Rachel's done with women's golf too. I mean, incredible. So it feels like there's a good set of people here now. Just keep chipping away at it, and keep doing away with people thinking, hey, it's ULM, they're going to finish last in the Sun Belt. Now that's got to go away, and I think it's starting to in some of those other things. Now let's get it over to the sports that get a little bit more visibility. Hopefully that's what's coming next.
Last thing I have for you there, Mike, you talked a lot about coaching carousel. It's hitting the Sun Belt there, where Tim Beck is no longer the till chicken. How do we get to that expectation where 6-6 just isn't good enough, that you're going to a bowl game, and sorry, that's not acceptable.
Coastal announced that change. I know Georgia Southern announced some changes within their staff. They've held on to Clay Helton, but I don't get it. I mean, I go back to, Jamie Chadwell and Grayson McCall there a couple years ago. That was lightning in a bottle. That was, you're not going to consistently be a 12-0, 11-1 type of team in this league. I mean, even JMU we saw last year came down a little bit. Now they may be back up there this year, but it's going to fluctuate a little bit. I don't know that I had Coastal pegged to go to a bowl game before this year, if I'm being honest. When I went through and did my preseason poll for the Sun Belt, that they never published the media poll, so it didn't matter. I don't know that I had them pegged to go to a bowl game. And here they are, and they fired their coach. And for somebody like me that, covers all the sports, I'm at every game and do all that, I sat there and saw that today, and I'm going, my gosh, we would kill for 6-6 and be going to a bowl game, and they fired their coach and they did it, and so I don't get it. I don't get it. I understand their frustration, that they're not at that level they were, but that was lightning in a bottle with Jamie Chadwell and Grayson McCall. I mean, you had everything right. You had the right coach, the right quarterback. To everything. Do that, it's rare. It is rare to do that. And so, Coach Beck will land on his feet somewhere and he'll be fine. And sometimes fan bases, because it's oftentimes the fans that call for this and all that, you don't think your floor is as low as it actually is. And I don't know what Coastal will do. Coastal may bounce back and be just fine, but your floor is lower than you think it is. So when I don't think people realize that. So we'll see. But interesting to see when teams go 6-6 or better and make changes in this league. It's like, man, you don't know how good you got it. You're still going to the postseason. You still got those extra practices. It seems like things are going well for you, because that's as good as you can do is a bowl game. I mean, JMU is putting up one of the best seasons we've seen in the Sun Belt and still probably won't get in the playoff unless Duke does something crazy in the ACC championship and the ACC left out. So, the ceiling in this league might be, okay, you went 11-1 or 12-1, and congrats, you still get to go to Orlando or wherever, you don't get to go to the playoff. So, 6-6 in a bowl game, what more can you do? So I just hope, I'd love for ULM to be in that spot where 6-6 means the coach is gone. So that'd be a dream, but yeah, still I'd love to be at 6-6 and be calling a football game in December, Dusty. I've still never called a football game in December, and I would love to call a football game in December someday. And, being here for 8 years, I would love for that football game in December to be for the ULM Warhawks and call something historic. But we'll wait. We'll try it again in 2026.
I love it. And to talk about the ceiling and the fans were ready to fire Mike Desimo from Louisiana Lafayette after back-to-back 6 and 7 seasons.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I talked with former head coach Keith Richard, and he's like, if Brian Vincent were to go 6 and 7 for 10 years straight, they'd build a statue of him. And I think Coach Richard was kind of hinting that he wanted a statue of him, because he's like, I did it 8 times, going to the CIT and the CBI, and we were in the finals. And so whenever we renovate Fant Ewing, we need to have the Keith Richard monument somewhere in there.
I've actually said, independent of that, I've told a couple folks, it's like whenever something, at some point, I feel like something's got to be named for Coach Vining and something's got to be named for Coach Richard. And, you can look, people can bemoan what happened the last couple of years under Coach Richard, but the bottom line is this: that program was on the verge of getting shut down when he took over. And he if Chris Beard doesn't show up in Little Rock in that year, he takes that team to the NCAA tournament. I mean, he did everything for that program and gave them new life to a program that he played for, and was an assistant. Like, he did everything here. And, I'm with you. Something's got to be done for Coach Richard. Something's got to be done for Coach Vining, because, a lot of folks anymore, it's been a while since ULM basketball has been NCAA tournament and doing those sort of things, but there's a lot of history in that program. It's a lot of good history. And so hopefully something can be done.
Awesome stuff, Mike. Can't thank you enough for filling in for the slacker of Chase. and good luck as you go to Nacogdoches, not Natchitoches, Nacogdoches, Texas.
It'll be great. And then the week after, I'll take my talents to South Beach.
Oh, if we could only all be Mike Hammett.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.